Not yet. Can you all come back together? I know we have not seen each other in such a long time, but please come back to your seats. We have an exciting session coming forward, and we want to get you engaged in this session. I guess while I'm here, I'm going to introduce the leader for our next session, Bobbie Laur. Bobbie is the president of Campus Compact, and has been for about 2.5 years. Before this, she worked at Towson University in the Outreach and Community Engagement Department, and she was the executive director of CUMU, the Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities, which does similar kinds of work, anchor institutions work, and others. She's fabulous, and I'm excited to have her here for the next panel.
Thanks, Amy. Well, we've made it. We're at the last panel. We stand between you and the reception, which is always a really lovely place to be. I am thrilled to be with everyone today for what I know is going to be a fantastic cap to a wonderful day. Compact, as many people here may know, was founded almost 40 years ago. And we have been absolutely in deep partnership with AmeriCorps since its founding 30 years ago. Our missions are completely aligned. We both focus on activating and fostering civic and community engagement to strengthen communities and improve lives. But having that kind of relationship means that we have a lot of people in common. Many of them are here. As Amy said, I have only been with Campus Compact for 2.5 years, and this is an organization that holds on to people, and I have met people throughout the time here that I've never gotten to meet face to face, that one time or another played a role in Campus Compact, whether that was on a campus, in a state organization, in a regional organization, or in the national office. So thank you all for everything that everyone in this room has contributed to Campus Compact during its history and what we've all built together. I want to also specifically thank Susan Stroud, who is here. If you don't know, Susan was the founding director of Campus Compact. She was also maybe like email number 2 that I got after I got this job. And I hadn't had the pleasure of meeting Susan, but she reached out and I said, Bobbie, can we talk? I would love to get to know you. And I am so happy to share that as of July 1st, we also welcomed her back to Campus Compact as a board member. So now she's my boss. We've had a really wonderful day, and when we talked about this closing panel, Amy said, can we just kind of also provide a cap about what we've heard thus far? And there's been some natural themes that have emerged. We've talked a lot about networks and relationships and how central they are to this work and the field that has been built. We've talked a lot about partnerships, and that partnerships are really at the core of what we do. And those partnerships are between organizations, with communities, between members. We talked about Andy really helped put a real strong pin on what started as a US Central movement is really a global movement at this point. I'm so excited to have Marisol here with us, who's been leading so much incredible work as well around the globe to advance civic and community engagement. We heard so many phenomenal examples about how AmeriCorps and the Corporation for National Community Service spurred systems change and innovation, and more than anything, transformed lives. And today, and particularly this conversation, we're going to turn the page about where we go from here. But as we turn the page, it's important to sit in this existing reality. And we know that AmeriCorps and higher education do not exist separate from our communities. They exist within and in service too. And these are difficult times. We are living through a time where the racial wealth equity gap continues to widen, where gun violence, mental health are compounding crises affecting all of us, and particularly our most vulnerable communities. We are reckoning with harm in so many different ways, and that includes higher education taking a very serious and necessary look inward around what higher education has done in this country, around our role in place-based work. And the reality is, community and civic engagement leaders have been on the forefront of helping campuses reckon with that and really think through where we go from here. But we also know that civic and community engagement must be our path forward. This is a moment where higher education in particular is reimagining itself in every way. And it's also an opportunity for us to center community engagement, like so many people have said today, not as a nice to have, not as a simple mission statement pillar, but at the core of who and what higher education is. Today's closing panel is going to be a good one, so stretch and get buckled up because we're going to get started. The way that we're going to run today's final conversation is we're going to have both Michael and John give brief keynote remarks, and then we're going to have time for a brief conversation. We're going to close today, as it was talked about, with some phenomenal words from Alex Edgar. So I'm now honored to introduce Michael D. Smith, the Chief Executive Officer of AmeriCorps, the Federal Agency of Service and Volunteering. Michael has dedicated his career to social justice by reducing barriers and expanding opportunities for children and families in underserved communities, like those where he grew up. During his tenure at AmeriCorps, he has sharpened the agent's focus on equity, investing in what works, and uniting communities through the power of service. He has also served as an executive director of My Brother's Keeper Alliance, director of youth opportunity programs at the Obama Foundation, and spent many years as the senior vice president of social innovation at the Case Foundation. A renowned thought leader on service and proud Massachusetts native, he is a senior Atlantic Fellow for Racial Equity and a member of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America Alumni Hall of Fame, the highest honor bestowed by the organization. Please join me in welcoming Michael Smith to the stage.
Thank you, Bobbie. Let's hear it for Bobbie one more time. Thank you for your leadership and for your service. It is good to be here. How is everybody feeling? I don't believe you. You know what? Hold on a second. You do it, Wendy.
How's everybody feeling? Fired up, ready to serve.
Fired up? It's good to see you all here today. I haven't seen Wendy in so long. It's wonderful to be here. It's great to be here with a room of tremendous leaders, trailblazers that have been at the intersection of higher education and national service. I think about the success stories that are, I'm going to try to get this on here first. There we go. The success stories that were shared this afternoon underscore the strong foundation that folks in this room have set over the last 30 years, a foundation that AmeriCorps proudly stands on today. In the history of national service, higher education leaders were instrumental in creating what we now know as AmeriCorps, leaders like Catherine Milton and Susan Stroud, whose shoulders we stand on today. So let's hear it for them. When I say that, though, I remember the words of the late, great John Lewis, who would say, you know, people come to me all the time and say, I'm standing on your shoulders. And he would say, get off my shoulders and get to work. So let's get off of their shoulders and let's keep getting to work. You know, we've been talking about through our 30th anniversary that over the past 30 years, every single time America calls, AmeriCorps has answered. Since day one, education has lived at the heart of AmeriCorps' programs, and today we have more than 50,000 AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps senior volunteers that serve in nearly 10,000 P-12 schools all across the country. And through it all, I don't have to tell this room that we have witnessed schools and classrooms transformed and energized with an extra set of hands, an excess of hugs. That's usually from our foster grandparents, but maybe others. I've been a beneficiary of some of those hugs. And certainly an abundance of heart. And now a whole lot of evidence from the work that our members and volunteers do. When I took this job, I worked with many of you in this room to think about what is a new, bold vision for this agency. And central to that vision was, how do we reduce barriers to service? We're all dealing with increasing cost, and when we think about that, we have to take action to reduce the burden of student loan debt and make receiving an education a possibility for those who seek it. Over the last 30 years, our more than 1.3 million AmeriCorps alum have earned nearly $5 billion in Siegel AmeriCorps Education Awards to pay for college. $5 billion. I think, for Catherine, Susan, for so many of you around 30 years ago, who could have imagined that would be the number we would be talking about today? They've paid off student debt, and we've also expanded our schools of national service, where there are now 330 schools that are providing some sort of preference to AmeriCorps alum, because they know those are the exact sorts of passionate, compassionate, community-minded individuals that they want in their classrooms. And I am so glad that we're having this conversation with my friend Chancellor King, because what he's done at SUNY is such an extraordinary representation of what a school of national service is at its best. I think everyone knows that last October, the Chancellor added 15 SUNY colleges and universities as schools of national service. 15. He went even further to enact a system-wide college application fee waiver for AmeriCorps alum who can apply to up to 7 SUNY campuses for a savings of $350. And he's establishing a team under his leadership that in part is focusing on recruiting AmeriCorps alumni to take care of these benefits. So he's not just putting it out there, he's going to make sure that students know about it so that they come in. I think about so much of this work, and what it comes down to is this being a huge win-win. Students who have served get an easier pathway to a college or vocational education, which we all know is still too often out of reach. I was actually in a conversation this summer with Nicole Hannah-Jones from the 1619 Project and Jelani Cobb, and there was an educational leader in the audience who said, what are we going to do that students don't want to go to college anymore or higher education? Why don't they value education? And Jelani and Nicole was like, I hear you, but what are we doing to make sure that college is more affordable, that they actually feel like they're going to get something out of their degree, and they're not looking at data that's saying I might end up in more debt than I'm making when I come out. And so I think it's an incumbent upon all of us to look at both angles of that challenge. I'm also proud that we are not just growing our network of partnership universities, we are prioritizing equity in our award making, like investing in more of our MSIs and our nation's HBCUs. Last year, AmeriCorps invested over $2 million in HBCUs, which is fine, but what's really exciting about that, that's a 60% increase from where we were the year before. In addition to the work that we're doing at HBCUs, I'm just really also proud of some of the initiatives that we've been able to launch in the Biden administration, which are showing that there is such an important pathways from service to economic and educational opportunity. I remember we got a call from Ann Mora and Maureen Healy, Mo, who I think is in this room, saying, AmeriCorps is doing great work in this space to make sure that there are AmeriCorps members that are serving in classrooms across the country, but we're looking at learning loss. We're looking at 600,000 fewer teachers in this country. We need more tutors, we need more coaches, and we were able to put our heads together with partners in this room and now launch the National Partnership for Student Success, where President Biden issued a bold goal to say we're gonna get 250,000 new tutors, mentors, coaches, post-secondary coaches that are working in school, and AmeriCorps would be at the heart of it. And I remember when we were having those conversations, having been a part of administrations getting bold goals, I was sheepish. It's like, why don't we say 100,000? Because we're going to get there. And I am so proud that I think 6 months ago or more now, we were at South by Southwest. We talked about 180,000. We were already at 180,000. And I think really soon we're going to have some good news before the end of this administration, where we are towards the National Partnership for Student Success. And that's making a real difference for not only our students, but our educators. I'm also really excited about our Youth Mental Health Corps. When we launched Public Health AmeriCorps, we were seeing a lot of applications that were coming in for this mental health space. And then we were hearing from partners like America Forward and Schultz Family Foundation and Pinterest that they wanted to do something about it. And so today we now have 11 states that are working with us to make young people a part of the solution to the challenge that we're facing with mental health. And this year alone, we will have more than 500 AmeriCorps members that are peers between the ages of 18 to 29 that are working in our schools to be navigators, to identify students that are having troubles, to do some level of SEL and cognitive behavioral therapy, but also to get the training that they need so that they will become a part of the youth mental health workforce in the future. And that is the kind of innovative work that we are all getting to do together. What I love so much about this agency, we're a federal agency, but we are not stuck. We are not stale. We are not status quo. We move quickly. We move nimbly to make sure that we are responding to the issues of the day. And that is because of the work that you all have done over these years. Earlier this summer, many of you probably saw the editorial by the Washington Post editorial board, where they noted a revitalized national service program would not only help young Americans preparing to enter the workforce, but that the most profound benefits might flow to society at large from instilling in a diverse group of participants a shared sense of service and duty, alleviating political apathy and building unity. We didn't ask them to do that, they wrote about it. And we agree, because we have the data to back it up. 82% of our members have said service was a defining professional experience. I was just telling Chancellor King another piece of evidence we have, which I found so compelling, is more than 70% of our AmeriCorps alums said that they actually changed a deeply held belief after their AmeriCorps service. When's the last time you changed a deeply held belief and didn't just argue harder on Facebook? And so we should all go into AmeriCorps to challenge our assumptions. And so we see from so many AmeriCorps alum in this room that we gain a greater awareness of social and systemic issues. They feel more comfortable engaging with people from a variety of backgrounds, and they re-examine their beliefs and attitudes, as I have mentioned. And we have seen this extraordinary spirit in the folks that are represented in this room, or I even think about some of the folks that I've met. I think about Domingo Morales, who founded Compost Power after being a Green City Force AmeriCorps member in the Bronx, New York. If any of you have had a chance to hear Domingo's story, he'll say, you know, he was a kid not sure what direction he was going in, and he didn't know what he was going to do next. He's like, I had a neck tattoo. I didn't know who was going to hire me. I didn't know what I was going to do. And he saw a flyer in his public housing in New York, a flyer, not a tweet, not an Instagram post. He saw a flyer from Green City Force saying, come as you are. We want you to participate in this urban environmental program. And he's like, I don't know if I really like dirt, but I'll give it a try. And fast forward a few years later, his Green City Force experience transformed his life, so much so that he founded Compost Power, which now hires AmeriCorps alum to work on composting projects with the city. I also think about a doctor that I met in Milwaukee when we were launching Public Health AmeriCorps. He told me that 10 years prior, his parents were pushing him to go to medical school, but he wasn't sure that that's what he wanted to do. And he found a VISTA program at a community health clinic to try it out. And 10 years later, I guess it worked out because he was a doctor that was going to be leading the new Public Health AmeriCorps initiative. So I just want to say to folks in this room, you make that possible. You make that story possible for so many. And as leaders in the higher education space, you really have been the linchpin between public service and career development. I also just want to acknowledge, since I am standing behind this beautiful Learn and Serve America logo, that Learn and Serve America was an extraordinary, extraordinary tool that we had at our disposal. And it was cost effective. With funding ranging from $35 to $43 million, we distributed thousands of grants to K-12 higher education institutions and community-based organizations. Those grants engaged over 1 million students per year, 40% of whom came from disadvantaged circumstances. And I have to tell you, the loss of the program was a tough blow. But we continue to fund service learning through other programs, and thanks to many of you, there is greater awareness about the benefits of service learning here in Washington, D.C. And I even think about when we were looking at some of our recruitment challenges. The fact that we weren't reaching that 1 million students per year makes a difference. When I think about the fact that so often we're waiting for someone to be 18 years old before we're first talking to them about service, we have to think about how we can do more of this. And so I just want to close with one thing. Last week we had Heather McGee, the author, the scholar, the policy expert who was at our AmeriCorps symposium. And in her book, The Sum of Us, Heather said that she is fundamentally a hopeful person because she knows that decisions made the world as it is, and that better decisions can change it. She said nothing about our situation is inevitable or immutable, but you can't solve a problem with the consciousness that created it. So as we go back to our communities, as we celebrate but think about the future, I encourage you to think a little bit about the consciousness that we might need to push back on. What is the consciousness that says your national service through AmeriCorps shouldn't be same as your military service, and that we potentially need a new GI Bill? I was with Joel Berg this week and last week, I believe, and Joel was reminding me that in 1989, when these first conversations were taking place, the average in-state tuition was $2,000 a year. And the goal of AmeriCorps at that time, in 1989, even in 1993, was the hope that you would get $10,000 and your what eventually would become the Eli Siegel Education Award. It's now just less than $8,000. What does it mean that when you have service and you give service to your country that we pay for your education? What would it mean if we make sure that in addition to addressing the results of the challenges in our communities, that we form AmeriCorps members that are also working on systemic solutions? And of course, what would it mean to reject the consciousness and think about the consciousness that might be creating income inequality? I am so proud that this field pushed us to think differently about our living allowance, that under the Biden administration, we've almost doubled a living allowance for many programs, and that 80% of our grantees go higher than even what the agency provides. And so as we go back and as we think about this celebration that we have, I hope that we will think about going deeper, further, and faster, so that the movement that started with such incredible hope, such incredible possibility, can be even stronger, even more transformative in the next 30 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. It is now my distinct honor to welcome Chancellor John B. King Jr. to the podium. Dr. King was sworn in January 2023 as the 15th Chancellor of SUNY, the largest comprehensive system of public higher education in the U.S. He's a lifelong learner in public education, equity, and opportunity for students throughout New York State and nationwide. Chancellor King served in President Barack Obama's cabinet as the 10th Secretary of Education there you go, yes. After having supported the Obama administration as a deputy secretary. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, and Chancellor King began his career in education as a high school social studies teacher and later a middle school principal. That's right, that's another round of applause for the social studies teacher. Before eventually becoming New York State's first African American and first Puerto Rican Commissioner of Education. Chancellor King holds a Bachelor of Arts in Government from Harvard University, a JD from Yale Law, as well as both a Master of Arts in Teaching of Social Studies and a Doctorate in Education from Teachers College at Columbia University. Please join me in welcoming the 15th Chancellor of SUNY, Chancellor John B. King Jr.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of this celebration of 30 years of AmeriCorps. I just want to salute Michael Smith. We had the opportunity to work very closely together in the Obama administration on My Brother's Keeper. I admired him then. I admire him now. I'm so grateful for his service and leadership. Can we have another round of applause for Michael? There are so many friends in this room, so many folks who've been involved in service from the beginning, like Susan, so many folks who worked with me at the department or in the Obama administration, new friends like Bobbie, whose work I so admire. So it's just wonderful to be here with all of you. I want to share a couple things. One, why for me service is so central to the work we do at SUNY. Two, we want to share some of the things that we're doing, which Michael started to describe. And then third, I want to offer a challenge to us as we look ahead to the future. So first, why center service? Well, for me, it is very much true that I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing. I wouldn't be standing here but for the role that service played in my life. Those in the room who know me know that my story began with being a kid in Brooklyn, going to New York City public schools. I lost both my parents as a kid, my mom when I was 8, my dad when I was 12. The thing that saved me was school. Amazing public servants who made the choice to become teachers, who made school a place that was safe and nurturing and engaging. But I struggled in high school, like many young people who have experienced trauma. Got in a lot of trouble in high school, got kicked out of high school, and didn't know what path my life would take. I was fortunate that school had always been a place that I loved, and so I made it thanks to my uncle, who was a former Tuskegee Airman, who took me in after I got kicked out of high school and helped show me the right path. Because of him and amazing teachers and a school counselor, I got a second chance and had the opportunity to go to Harvard for college. And I remember, I always think about this a lot at the start of the academic year, I remember those early weeks of college struggling with imposter syndrome, certain that somebody was going to come and tap me on the shoulder and say, we made a mistake. And I struggled with that, and I struggled with whether or not I would find my people in college. And I see that as I visit our campuses. You know, so many young people are struggling to figure out who they are, where they fit. And the thing that helped me find my people was service. Volunteering in Boston Public Schools, first teaching civic education as an enrichment program in Boston Public Schools classrooms, and then running after school and summer programs in Roxbury, in Boston. That's where I found my people, the folks with whom I was serving and the communities in which I served. And through finding my people, I also found my path and decided to become a teacher and an educator, and actually taught and was a principal in the very same community where I'd served as an undergraduate. And through that work, found my purpose in a life of public service and a life of commitment to the equity function of education, the way in which education can create paths to social mobility and opportunity. And so when I think about what service means, I know deeply personally how transformative it can be in the lives not only of those who are served, but those who are doing the serving. And so when I think about our relationship to that work at SUNY, I know that our institutions, our 64 campuses, will be better places of learning if we infuse service throughout what we do. I know it will help our students be more successful. I know it will help our communities be stronger. I know it will enrich the quality of discussion in our classrooms. I know that it will allow our students to have experiences that will set them up for success after they graduate. And so we've been very focused at SUNY on trying to expand service opportunities. Michael mentioned our commitment to have 15 of our campuses, an additional 15 of our campuses, become schools of national service, our commitment to free applications for AmeriCorps alumni. We're recruiting for that AmeriCorps alumni recruiter position on our team, so if you know somebody good, send them our way. But we want to make sure that we are letting students and families know about the opportunities. Many of our campuses are providing additional scholarship funding, an array of opportunities for AmeriCorps alumni. We want students and families to know about that. But we didn't want to stop there. Michael talked about the National Partnership for Student Success and the work to recruit tutors. One of the things that the Biden administration did that I think was very helpful was to remind folks that work study can be used to support service work. And so we had 16 of our campuses commit to use at least 15% of their work study hours to support participation in the National Partnership for Student Success. So we are, in addition to having the schools of national service, we are mobilizing our students in the effort to provide tutoring that will help address the impact of COVID learning loss on our students. But we didn't want to stop there. We, working with Governor Hochul and Lieutenant Governor Delgado, are launching now something called the Empire State Service Corps, where we will have 500 SUNY students who will participate in service. It will be paid 300 hours of service. Sound familiar? Paid 300 hours of service. And through that service, they will tutor in schools, they will work on environmental issues, they will work in food pantries and shelters. They will make our community stronger, and they will have a set of learning experiences that will enrich their education. We had, as I said, 500 slots in the Empire State Service Corps. We very quickly had 3 times as many applications as we had slots, and my team is very stressed about that. But I know that is going to be my talking point when I give my budget testimony in a few months, to say that we have more students who want these opportunities, and so we need to grow the Empire State Service Corps. And so Lieutenant Governor Delgado and I will be doing an event on September 18th to officially launch the Empire State Service Corps, but we're excited about that work. We didn't want to stop there. We also have a SUNY AmeriCorps program that we launched last year called the FAFSA Completion Corps. Now, at the time we launched it, we didn't know how essential that FAFSA Completion Corps would turn out to be, but talking to the students who are participating is so inspiring. So these are current SUNY students who are working with prospective students and their families to help them navigate the FAFSA. And they turned out to play a vital role over the last year, and we had them continue into the summer to support students. And when you talk with them, one of the things that's so powerful is students describing the impact of the service experience on them. I think about a student who described having struggled with the FAFSA and the college application process, particularly helping his parents because English was not their first language. And he then described how satisfying it was to work with prospective students and their families for whom English is not their first language, and to help them navigate that process, and how much that gave him a sense of purpose. And so we're really proud of the FAFSA Completion Corps, and looking forward to growing that effort. But this is part of also a broader effort at SUNY to really make sure that civic engagement is central to what we do. And so last year we announced we're changing our general education requirements to build in civic discourse as a competency that every SUNY undergraduate will experience across the curriculum. And so we're working with faculty now to think about what that means for how courses need to be designed, what kinds of conversations need to be structured in our courses. We launched a civic engagement fellowship, 10 faculty members selected from across the SUNY system who are leading professional development for their colleagues to help them think about how to build civic discourse into what we do. Michael's point about the ways in which service can help bind us together, that is a very important issue for us at SUNY. We are very diverse. We are an engine of social mobility for New York State. Our 64 campuses are spread all over the state. 95% of New Yorkers live within 30 miles of a SUNY campus. So we really are everywhere, and that means everywhere across the political spectrum. And one of my hopes about this work that we're doing on civic engagement and on service is that it gives people an opportunity to serve alongside people who have different beliefs and values than they do, but to find their common humanity through service. And that, I think, couldn't be more necessary in this moment, given the challenges we face as a country. So let me close with this, with a challenge for all of us. And when we were all together, many of us in Little Rock, celebrating the anniversary of AmeriCorps with President Clinton, I raised this point. We have so much to be proud of over these last 30 years, and it is not enough. We need more. We need many more AmeriCorps slots. my dream for the country is that everyone should engage in national service, that we should make that we should make that just core to who we are as Americans, that there is an expectation that you will serve. Maybe it's in the military, maybe it's through AmeriCorps, maybe it's through becoming a teacher, maybe it's through training to be a doctor and serving in a high-needs community, but that our expectation is that everyone will spend time serving, because I think it will make us a stronger country. It will help us bridge our divides. It will help us find more joy in our lives. You know, we have this crisis. The Surgeon General Murthy, talks about the crisis of loneliness in our culture. If we want to solve that, service can help us do that. It can be the place where we find joy in relationships and joy in serving. So I want to challenge us to leave here fired up and ready to serve, but also fired up and ready to advocate for the expansion of AmeriCorps, and ready to advocate as well for some of the less focus on parts of the AmeriCorps work. I think the work to mobilize seniors to serve is also extraordinarily important to the country. That is a story we also need to tell. But I'm so grateful just for the opportunity to be with a room of folks who share this commitment to service and to civic engagement. And I hope you will tell every parent you know with a high school senior that they should send their kid to SUNY. Our tuition at our four-year institutions, $7,070 for the year. So, yeah, there it is. So, look, I say that in seriousness. We are trying at SUNY to be a different kind of higher education institution. We have a lot of higher education institutions in this country that their main thing is to try to tell you how few people they will serve. Our message at SUNY is there is a place for every New Yorker at SUNY. And we're happy to take folks from Pennsylvania and Massachusetts and anywhere they want to come to us. But thank you for the opportunity to be with you all.
Okay, so let's dig in. Let's kind of start with almost where you finished. So the call to action that you put out to this group was that we've done a lot in 30 years, but we have a lot farther to go. And a statement that you made, Michael, was I think we need to go deeper and we need to go faster in doing it. Both of you, what do you think are some of those next steps? You know, you talked about needing to advocate, but particularly between higher education and AmeriCorps, what can we do to do exactly that?
Oh my goodness, where to start? Hello? Okay. I have to be careful because I am not allowed to make policy suggestions that have not been vetted by the Office of Management and Budget and Domestic Policy Council. So I'll share some things. I'll share some things that I've seen recently. One, and John, you talked about this a little bit. I think we need to double down on the resources that are already there. So, for instance, with our American Climate Corps that we're running. AmeriCorps didn't get any dollars from the infrastructure law, but there is a lot of money that is untapped at agencies across the country and at the state and local level as well. And so through the American Climate Corps, we are now working to pull down those resources. We actually recently did a study with looking at funding, and we found that in the past couple years, we've been able to bring in more than $400 million in other people's money, both from federal agencies and from the private sector, which has supported more than 20,000 AmeriCorps members that are not a part of our annual appropriation. And so what can we do to make sure that we are working with other federal agencies to incentivize the bringing additional dollars down to support this work? And I think that part of the reason that AmeriCorps was established as a government corporation was this idea that we would have more public-private partnerships, and I think we have barely scratched the surface on what's possible. I think when you talk about the linkage between higher education and AmeriCorps, you really have to look at what the chancellor is doing. I would say what SUNY is doing is one of the boldest partnerships that we have seen across this country. We certainly have other institutions that are doing a really great job, for instance, on providing housing for AmeriCorps members. There are certainly some institutions that are covering full tuition for AmeriCorps members. And I think the other area, and what we see here with Amy and the work that she's doing at GW, is how do we provide more funding to higher education institutions, not only to run programs, but to be intermediaries for other organizations that might find running an AmeriCorps grant to be a little difficult. And so how can, it's getting better. We're making it better. I hear that laughter over there. We're modernizing, we're simplifying. Sonali will tell you that we just did a modernization of our notice of funding. And before the modernization that we did, our AmeriCorps State and National NOFO read at the level of a medical journal. And so we are now, to freshman and undergraduate level? So we're making progress. But what can we do to make sure that colleges and universities can use AmeriCorps funding to be a partner not only to potential AmeriCorps students, but to nonprofits in their communities? In my hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts, I was with with Springfield College that funds AmeriCorps grantees, I think 12 different nonprofits across the city, and they provide the intermediary backbone to do that. And so I think those are 3 ways that we could deepen that partnership.
I can't just say amen. A couple things I would add or emphasize. I think this idea of using existing resources is really smart. I mentioned the role of work study. I think that is a very underutilized resource to support service work. We are, one of the things that we've also launched in New York is something we call our Climate Corps internship program. So we have this goal for every SUNY undergraduate to have an internship experience. We have a long way to go, but we're making progress, and we've gotten some good state resources to support that. One of the things we launched was a Climate Corps internship with our sister agencies, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Parks Department, where we're placing students for the summer with those agencies to work on climate issues. And so we're mobilizing the resources of state government to create more opportunities to serve. I also think we need to help higher ed leaders see where AmeriCorps and advocacy for AmeriCorps can advance the broader higher ed mission. I've been struck in the last couple of weeks, we're already seeing the devastating impact of the Supreme Court decision around affirmative action. And although the early data is certainly mixed, significant drops in particularly African American students at many of the nation's most selective colleges, that's a very worrying phenomenon. And one of the things we've said from really right after the decision was made was that we were going to find every legal tool to make sure that we maintained our commitment to diversity at SUNY, and that includes recruiting AmeriCorps alumni, because that is a place to address diversity. And so we, right after the decision, put out a system-wide policy that we would, in our admissions policy, look at low-income status, first-gen status, adversity overcome in your school or community, whether or not you're an AmeriCorps alum, whether or not you're a veteran, so that we would use every tool to try to ensure diversity. So for higher ed leaders, they should see AmeriCorps as a natural partner to maintain our values around diversity. They should see AmeriCorps as not only a pipeline for incoming students, but also a place where their graduates might go early in their careers. They should also see AmeriCorps as a part of enriching the academic experience, the insights that a student can bring into the classroom who has, served in Appalachia is very different and powerful, right? And so we need higher ed leaders to be advocates for AmeriCorps. And I don't know that we've built that bridge enough, but I certainly want to do everything I can to try to get my higher ed colleagues to lend their voice to this movement.
And John, could I say, I don't think the agency has done enough to be a partner in recent years to higher education. I know during the George W. Bush administration, for instance, there was a higher education honor roll in which we celebrated universities for the tremendous work that they were doing. I heard that got a little complicated as well. It seems like we do complication well, but I think that there is more that we can do to really lift up and celebrate how universities are partners, the work that you are doing. And so, as the going gets tough and other priorities come out, things get boxed out. But I think we could be doing more as an agency to lift up what's working and to call on academic leaders to be partners to the agency.
Yeah, I want to lean in on where you just ended there. So let's talk about what it's going to take to make that case. And you just talked about some great examples of how do we make that case to higher ed. How do we make that case across political lines? How do we make that case to the business community? What are those narratives and messages that we need to be lifting up in more direct ways?
I'll start. There were some of us actually just having a conversation about this. I never know what I'm supposed to say in public, but I'll share this. McKinsey is doing, don't tell anybody this. They might not want us to know yet. Did people sign anything? Anyway, just us.
Sure.
McKinsey is working with us on a pro bono project to look at the value proposition of AmeriCorps. And so we've been having, because we believe we're the best kept secret. Voices did a study some years ago that shows for every $1 that the federal government spends, we see $17 in return on investment. You cannot get a better investment from a government dollar. But I think because we do so much, because we are so many things, because we are the secret sauce for so many communities. Some of us were in Alaska last year where we have 2 AmeriCorps members that are serving in Scammon Bay, Alaska. They're native folks. You can only get to Scammon Bay by a very small airplane, or when the river freezes over, you can take a snow machine. And they're doing salmon fishing, and they're doing moose hunting, teaching about subsistence living and preserving traditional languages and cultures. And then you go to the Bronx, where we're doing urban gardening and composting. And I think that's a part of our secret sauce, but it also makes it a little tougher to sell. So we're working on really honing in. And so I think 1 is talking about the economics of it. I think 2 is doing a better job of talking about the evidence, because there are still not a lot of organizations out there that can say, AmeriCorps, for instance, 70% of our AmeriCorps grantees have strong or moderate levels of evidence. So we're not just guessing when AmeriCorps shows up that there's going to be impact. We know when AmeriCorps shows up there's going to be an impact. And we need to do a better job of telling that story. Like anybody that does work in the evidence-based space knows, we also have to do a better job of connecting evidence to storytelling as well. When we talk about the data on Green City Forest, we also need to talk about the story of Domingo. And so I think that is very important. But I believe after 3 years on this job, that the biggest value proposition for this agency is not the year of service or the 2 or 4 years of service. It's the and beyond for all of you that have taken the AmeriCorps pledge. The fact that we now have 1.3 million AmeriCorps alums, hundreds of thousands more seniors that we haven't done a good job of counting, that are in the halls of Congress, in the White House. Half of the team at McKinsey that Surprise is working with us are AmeriCorps alums. The woman who runs United Talent Agency is an AmeriCorps alum. The fact that we now have data that shows 75% of our AmeriCorps alums end up staying in the social sector compared to 25% of their colleagues, it is the gift that keeps on giving and really becomes the backbone to our public service sector and to our social sector. And I think that's what we have to double down on in terms of what we're talking about, the impact of this incredible movement.
I mean, that's perfect. I agree with everything that Michael said, and 2 observations I'll make, one which maybe he can't. The first is that when we talk about the higher ed service relationship, we have to make sure that community colleges are in that conversation. And I think a problem in the sector generally is that community colleges are often amongst elites seen as an afterthought when actually they are central to as a pipeline to economic opportunity for folks, but also an entry point to higher education. So many of our 4-year campuses are very reliant on students who transfer, and what a great experience to go from community college to an AmeriCorps experience to a 4-year institution. So we need to do a better job centering community colleges. The other one that Michael probably can't say is, I think we have to be more political And that's uncomfortable, right? That is uncomfortable. When I was a principal, one of the things I hated the most, ironic given what I've spent my life doing, I hated when politicians and other government officials would come. It was a distraction from the work that was supposed to be happening in classrooms. Now I come and I am that distraction. But I think it's important to do that outreach, and we need to do it in a very strategically bipartisan way. But it's not just senators and House members. It's the state legislators who are the senators and House members 5-10 years from now. It's the city council and county council members. It's getting them to sit with AmeriCorps students. There shouldn't be any elected official in America who doesn't know what AmeriCorps is about, right? But that takes intentionality about politics, and I think sometimes, grantees are nervous about being political, as they should be. So it takes this advocacy community. It takes folks who can reach out to those elected officials and bring them to the program and bring them to the service sites to see it. We have to do that, and we have to do it very systematically with 10-year goals in mind, not just what's going to happen this budget cycle.
Okay, so I'm a proud mom of 3 Maryland public school kids. And part of why I'm a proud mom, not just because Maryland's great, is that Maryland is one of those states where we have a service learning requirement for graduation. And so I think a last question I want to ask is, we taught when Learn and Serve and some of our earlier stories were really talking about the transformational impact, particularly when Learn and Serve was there, of building those pipelines, of building those experiences at the K-12 level, and then investing those in the collegiate experience as well. From both of your perspectives, what can we do more going forward to help foster that service experience in K-12 and that continual pathway into college? If we're going to start with you, John.
A couple things. One is school boards, superintendents, principals have to buy in. Too often, the service learning that happens in schools is a teacher with a cool project with their students, and that teacher is beloved and the project is amazing, but it's not institutionalized. And I think we've got to make sure that we are working to get administrators and elected officials to commit to this work in a K-12 context. And then related, the best advocates are the students because it has a transformative impact for them. And so figuring out how do we tap into those, particularly the high school community service organizations, how do we get them to be spokespeople for why this is good and tell those stories? I mean, Michael's so good at that. Making the policy, which might not be as compelling, real for people by telling the stories of the human experience. And when you talk about those service hour requirements in Maryland, where my daughters went to public school, it changed their perspective. It had an impact on them. And we need them to tell that story in more places.
I hope one day that there is funding to bring this back and to expand this work. Until then, I think we have to figure out how we can use the existing infrastructure. I'm going to tell other people's stories who are in this room. So I was at the Case Foundation right after City Year came to Washington, D.C. And I'm a Boys and Girls Club kid, as it was said. I love no other organization like I love Boys and Girls Club. But City Year was the second organization that I fell in love with in many ways, in addition to seeing AmeriCorps in action after Hurricane Katrina. Getting to know these City Year Corps members in Washington, D.C. who came together and watching the work they do was amazing. But I was there at the time when City Year switched to their whole school, whole child model. And that was saying, we're gonna go on the evidence. City Year, and I think it was Philly, was having extraordinary impact on absenteeism, behavior, and curriculum. And it's wonderful that we're doing HIV/AIDS work. It's wonderful that we're doing these big service projects, but we need to double down and go where the impact is. And I remember our City Year kids, especially there was this program called young heroes. Where city year members worked with middle school kids who became like little junior city years. And these kids were crying, the city year members, because their program was coming to an end and what was going to happen. And I remember thinking I believed in the direction that city year was going and also just how powerful that was because you were developing a pipeline. Then a couple weeks ago, Sonali and I were in LA talking to showrunners and writers, and because an AmeriCorps alum is at UTA and invited us in to do that. And Sonali, who is the first director of AmeriCorps State and National, who is an AmeriCorps alum, a City Year alum. Let's hear it for Sonali. Sonali told the story of two young boys that she worked with, Bobo, the older brother, and the younger brother, little Bobo, that she had worked with. And, Bobo was getting into some trouble. She wasn't quite sure how he was doing, and she would think about him from time to time. And Sonali was out speaking somewhere, and I think it was an induction ceremony for new City Year members. And a young man comes up in the City Year red jacket and says, "Sonali, I remember you. I'm now a City Year member." And she said, "Little Bobo?" So Sonali's telling the story and I'm crying because that's who I am. And I just think about the existing infrastructure that we already have with 50,000 AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps senior volunteers that are already in the schools, that are interacting with the little Bobos. You never know the impact that you're gonna have. So how can we build that in and not just make it something that might happen? How can we make sure that when we are already in schools as reading partners and City Year members and Teach for America alumni, that we are Teach for America members, that we are using that as an opportunity to bring in, connect with, and engage the next generation who is looking up to those near peers and who will follow in their footprint. And I think that is a strategy without another dime that we could invest more in to make sure that we have those pathways.
Thank you so much, Michael and John, for your remarks, for your leadership. It's now my pleasure to welcome Alex Edgar to the stage to provide us closing remarks. Alex is a recent UC Berkeley graduate and a Campus Compact Newman Civic Fellow who is reimagining America's approach to civic and youth engagement. He works to change systems to better serve younger generations through his roles as a youth engagement manager for Made by Us, civic engagement lead for the Youth Power Project, and listen to this, he is the youngest member of the U.S. Census Bureau's 2030 Census Advisory Committee. Please welcome Alex.
Hello, everyone. It is such an honor to be here today, especially coming right after these three trailblazers, Bobbie, John, and Michael. You three truly have led the way for myself, and I'm sure most of the people in this room. So if y'all would join me in giving them another round of applause. I had to. And with their legacy in mind, I want to start off by pointing out the obvious. I may be a bit younger than the three of them on the stage, just a couple years. But I believe there's a reason why I'm up here closing off our conversation today. And it's because we can't have a genuine conversation about shaping America's future through higher education and national service without bringing the future, the next generation, to the table. And that's really what I'm here to talk about, how we can work on passing the torch through national service. Now, for me, growing up, my dad, a community college professor, put me into Cub Scouts. And let's just say, all little Alex wanted to do on the weekends was watch Star Wars. And I mean, who can blame him? Didn't really know how to spell the word volunteering. And yet, through my time repairing hiking trails and serving in community service and senior centers, I learned the role that I and everyone else have in giving back to our communities. And today, as a proud Eagle Scout, a community organizer, and youth engagement specialist, I can say with confidence that my time volunteering growing up is some of the most impactful of my life. And truly, I can trace the person I am today back to those early experiences and the adults who really believed in me before I even really believed in myself. from community leaders and faith leaders who taught me the importance of community care and service and the idea of tikkun olam, to teachers and mentors who saw the little spark of Civic in me and helped ignite that flame and connected me to opportunities that have really led me to the place I am today. It is the older generations impacting the new ones that really brings us all together here. And now it's time for all of us in this room to continue that and push it into the future. Just last week, I was in Salt Lake City at the state capitol hosting a workshop for Made by Us, focused on Youth 250, one of our programs that's about connecting young people to America's 250th. And one of the most inspiring moments there was when Darren Perry, who is a tribal elder with the Shoshone tribe and a visiting professor at the University of Utah, came up and shared about this principle called the seventh generation principle. And it's a piece of indigenous philosophy from the Lakota tribe that focuses on how every action, every decision should be thought about with the impact 7 generations in the future. And I was kind of just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like what? Like we barely even think about right now, let alone maybe 1 generation in the future. Imagine if we thought about 7 generations in the future, and how can we shift the programs and the work that we're doing to really have that future-centered kind of work with it. And that's where I see, programs like AmeriCorps and the Newman Civic Fellowship, that we already have the tools that we need to reinvest in younger generations, empowering them to be the caretakers for our country and its democracy. But we can't just pay lip service to youth engagement. We have to let young people truly lead, making decisions, shaping programs, and not just being a token voice in the room. As a recent college graduate, I can tell you, my peers and I, we recognize the kind of disconnect that exists between young people and the people in charge, especially when we know, the world isn't always kind to folks who don't look like them. And I believe that's why today is so important. It's not just that we're, commemorating 30 years of AmeriCorps. It's a really critical moment in the continuum between the past and the present of national service and what that means for the future. A moment that is only possible because of the incredible work of all of you in this room, the tireless energy and dedication to service, but it is focused on how we can put new, renewed time, energy, and resources into empowering young people to create the future they want to live in. So I'm calling on all of you, let's stop talking about young people as some distant future. Let's start investing in them and talking about them as the present, the current leaders, the people that need our support now, and support us with the resources, opportunities, and trust we need to build a future that is really, not just focused on young people as passive beneficiaries, but active partners in all of the incredible work that y'all are doing. So if you leave here today with one thing, let it be this: the future is already in motion. Young people aren't waiting for permission or a new program to get involved in their communities. They're already out there. So let's put all of the incredible heads in this room and across the country together to see how we can reinvest and reinvigorate national service for the next 30 years. Thank you all so much.
Alex, I'm right there with you. Let's go. Let's go. What is it? Fired up?
Ready to serve.
Fired up?
Ready to serve.
All right. But first, we get to party. So let me thank you all. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Bobbie. Thank you, John, for your words. Thank you, Alex. This has been fabulous. It's been a fabulous day. Thank you to all our panelists. We have the opportunity to go upstairs to the 3rd floor in the grand ballroom and talk to one another some more, enjoy some light bites, and some conviviality, to use one of those medical school words.
Just one last word. A huge round of applause for Amy, who has been the one that made this happen.
Thank you all. We'll see you upstairs.